Here's a hot take. Video game hype culture is problematic. I know, so stunning, such brave. I've lost count of how many times I've seen mediocre games hyped to high Hrothgar, and on the flip side I've seen games that received no hype whatsoever, whether because the publisher failed to market them properly, or they just sounded so self-evidently terrible that no amount of marketing could save them. But I can't say I've ever seen a case of anti-hype, or a situation where a game's marketing, intentionally or not, does seemingly everything to make the game look as uninteresting as it can. That is, until I experienced the lead up to The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This game's pre-release marketing has been such a roller coaster that calling it mixed signals just doesn't do it justice. First, we had the surprise reveal at E3 2019, RIP E3, which didn't reveal much besides it being a direct sequel. But it did hint at a much darker and creepier tone than we've seen in the series since Twilight Princess, or maybe even Majora's Mask, depending on who you ask, which had a lot of people, myself included, very intrigued. Then Nintendo went completely radio silent for 2 years before we got a second teaser in 2021, which in my opinion is where the trouble began. We already knew the game was going to be a direct sequel, and that it would reuse the same overworld as Breath of the Wild, so naturally, going off of previous examples of engine asset reuse like Majora's Mask, Spirit Tracks, and Triforce Heroes, most of us assumed that the game would be releasing relatively soon. So when Nintendo revealed that the game would not only be skipping 2021, but that we weren't even getting a release window or even a title reveal, it started to raise some concerns. What's taking so long? Why haven't they shown us more? Are these Sky Islands really all there is? Well, when we finally got a title reveal in September of 2022, the answer seemed to be yes. But things started to look up a bit when we got the second official trailer back in February. This one showed off several new enemies, hinted at new underground regions, and revealed that you'd be able to craft vehicles. Maybe there is more to the game after all. Then came the March 28th gameplay showcase with AG Aonuma. I'm not gonna lie, this was the absolute nadir of hype for me, and no doubt many longtime Zelda fans. Don't get me wrong, freeform weapon fusion and vehicle crafting was seriously cool, and in any other circumstance probably would have sold me instantly, but at that moment it felt like the final nail in the coffin for any hope that this game would fix any of Breath of the Wild's shortcomings. This is it. This is all there is. Zelda is just a sandbox crafting game now. I wanted desperately to believe there was more, that this couldn't possibly be all they had to show after 6 years of development. But then if there was more, why haven't they shown it? What's the story? Where are the dungeons? Why have we seen nothing but Sky Islands? Maybe it really is just going to be a glorified expansion pack. Then Trailer 3 released. I hesitate to call this trailer perfect, but no other word really feels adequate. It feels like it was made specifically to convert skeptics and doubters. Virtually every concern raised about the game was seemingly addressed. For the first time, we actually got an idea of what the story would be about, including a sneak peek at some new characters with huge lore implications, the possibility of time travel playing a role, and most importantly, the impression that we'll actually get to play through the story instead of watching it all in flashbacks. We finally got an idea of how the surface of Hyrule has changed. Underground exploration was all but confirmed, possibly even hinting at proper dungeons. We got a much more varied look at Sky Islands, and a better showcase of what's possible with Fuse and Ultra Hand. We got even more new enemies, we got motherfucking bosses, we even got the champions fighting alongside us. And all that's in addition to just being a really well-crafted trailer. Just like that, there were no more doubters. 1 month out from release, and finally everyone seemed to be on board. At the time of writing, we're 2 weeks away from launch, and a little over 1 week since the first previews dropped. Those previews, I think, did a much better job of showcasing the versatility of the crafting system. It also seems like the combat has received some much-needed expansion. Previous trailers have implied a larger bestiary this time around, and the previews have confirmed the addition of a new mini-boss tier Bokoblin. Enemies also seem to attack in greater numbers. One of the biggest problems with Breath of the Wild's durability system was how it had the unintended side effect of making combat worthless after a certain point, as the reward you'd get for defeating most enemies wouldn't be worth the weapons you'd expend in the process. The weapon fusion system seems like it could remedy this issue, as enemies now drop fusible parts you can use to enhance/repair your weapons. The addition of armored enemies could also make weapon variety more important, something that was supposedly true for Breath of the Wild, though in practice never really mattered that much. So far, Tears of the Kingdom looks really promising. If nothing else, it looks like it'll be a solid expansion on Breath of the Wild's freeform systemic design, hopefully with a bit more of the traditional Zelda adventuring that Breath of the Wild sort of forgot about. My only real remaining concern is that we're reading too much into the final trailer and dungeons aren't coming back after all. The famous 2017 trailer for Breath of the Wild was not exactly representative of the final game, so it isn't out of the realm of possibility. Still, the fact that Nintendo remains so secretive about the game even now has me hoping that there's still much more we haven't seen, and after that last trailer, I think I'm finally ready to trust them. The lead up to Tears of the Kingdom feels a bit like a mirror universe version of Cyberpunk 2077. That game was everywhere. You couldn't go a single gaming event, or hell, even a single month, without some new tidbit from the Cyberpunk hype machine. That saturation had the benefit of ensuring an unparalleled level of excitement for the game, which, as we all know, ultimately blew up in their faces when it turned out the game they were hyping wasn't the game they were selling. Nintendo seems to be taking the direct opposite approach with Tears of the Kingdom, consciously choosing to not hype the game directly and instead let the mystique drive anticipation. Unfortunately, this actually seems to have generated negative hype. In trying to preserve as much surprise and mystique as possible, they inadvertently made the game look like glorified DLC, which, when combined with its insanely long development, had some, like myself, concerned the game might be having a troubled production, a la Skyward Sword. Thankfully, it seems all that worry was for naught. By the time you're seeing this, there's a good chance Tears of the Kingdom will already be out, and this entire video will seem so quaint it's cringe. But regardless of how good Tears of the Kingdom turns out to be, I still think there's an important lesson to be learned here. And that's the fact that, for as much as we deride AAA studios for overhyping their games, pivoting too far in the opposite direction can also be problematic, especially when it starts to raise questions about the health of the project itself. Like many issues in life, the answer, in my opinion, is better communication. There's a big difference between bullshotting or spoiling your game ahead of release and showing your game in the most underwhelming light imaginable. Maybe try for a more balanced approach next time, yeah? But what do you think? Are you hyped for Tears of the Kingdom? Let me know in the comments. And if you're watching this from the future, feel free to laugh at how ridiculous my worries sound in hindsight. I'm the Rambling Rune Pony, and I'll see you in the next one.